up, guys? I'm Ace.
This is RB3.
And this is the Meaning of Podcast, the podcast where we talk about your favorite directors and the deeper meaning within their films. And RB3, we're back and we're doing another director.
Right.
This time we're not doing a special episode or a franchise episode. We're going to talk about the history, the filmography, and the current state of Mr. F. Gary Gray. Very famous director, L.A., I believe he's an L.A. native.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he was born and raised in L.A. I think it says he was born in New York.
Oh, New York. I apologize.
Has very New York. Has very L.A. roots in terms of his filmography.
Has L.A. roots in his movies for sure. The huge influence from L.A. and hip hop.
John Singleton in particular, one of the big influences, I think, from him as well.
A lot of hip hop influence inside his movies as well, which is awesome because I still want to see more of that. We're going to talk about his movies, and the reason why is because a couple weeks ago, we had Tessa Thompson and Mr. Chris Hemsworth in Men in Black International. Right. RB3, did you see this movie?
I did not see this movie.
Full disclosure, I didn't see this one as well. Yeah. I wanted to, and I probably still will at some point, but unfortunately we did not. But I thought it was a great opportunity for us, or you thought it was a great opportunity for us to at least talk about a little bit of his career, his filmography, and where we think he can head into next. Let's start out with that, man. Men in Black is unfortunately another example of this 2019 summer box office kind of being a failure. I mean, I don't know if it's too early to call it a failure, but it kind of is already a failure. Any movie right now besides Endgame is proving, any franchise movie, big, popular, blockbuster movie besides Endgame is proving to not have a lasting effect on audiences like studios initially wanted. The examples I gave before were Godzilla. Another example is Dark Phoenix, obviously, that bombed huge. But another bomb, unfortunately, RB3, was Men in Black International. This was not a cheap movie, and it did not do very well. What do you think it is about these franchise movies and these box office movies that are supposed to be popcorn summer movies that people go out and see, and were making pretty good chunk of change 5-8 years ago, are now bombing at the box office?
Yeah, it's a real shame. I think this really goes to show the control that Disney is anchored over our media and our movies, particularly right now. I think honestly critics are being so kind to Disney films that they're kind of ready to shit on anything else that that isn't a Disney film at this point. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm coming from a little place of implicit bias. But I think it is kind of becoming an issue of like people not having any interest in anything other than MCU or Star Wars or anything that's not Disney related. And I think that's a real shame because there's a lot of great franchises out there that we shouldn't have to rely on the Disney dollar for. Yeah,
I've read this article.
But I also think that it's also good. So we can stop the sequels, stop the reboots, stop the remakes, and just get back to original movies, man. Just get back to original movies. That's all we need.
That leads right into my conversation about Sean Fennessy from The Ringer wrote this article titled "Everything's Flopping and No One's Happy." How the Hollywood business in the summer is proof that there's a real issue with sequelitis, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Yes, sir.
And how this, he quotes another writer inside this article talking about how Hollywood used to be about what is the big thing, what is happening, and now it's about what's to come. And it's more about teasing stuff and about teasing franchises and about IP than it is about quality films.
Right.
And the problem with that is that now the box office of summer 2019 is down 9%. It is the lowest box office summer so far since 1992. And it is proving to be pretty bad because it's one of those things where so much of these movies are supposed to deliver so much money, and it's simply not. And what's happening now is that smaller movies are getting even smaller at the box office, and they're not succeeding whatsoever. An example of this I have of URB3 is obviously Booksmart, Long Shot.
Good movies. Saw them both.
So there you go.
I saw yesterday, actually, too.
There you go. But one of the problem is that people aren't going out to see these small movies.
I saw yesterday.
Yesterday. Yeah, that's right. But the problem is people aren't going out to see these small movies. An example I'll give you, a day in a life example, is me and my homie, my roommate. Right. We're going to see Midsummer, the new
I'm sorry I can't join you tomorrow.
Yeah, I know. The new Ari Aster movie.
Yeah.
And he was like, bro, you got to get tickets now. And I'm like, not really, bro. Have you seen how many seats are open? This movie's not going to make money. It's just really not. Like, that's the matter. The matter of the fact is that these cool, like you said, A24, Booksmart, Longshot. Like,
isn't Booksmart Neon? Or is that Annapurna?
I think it's Annapurna. But the problem with these movies is that if the blockbusters aren't succeeding, then these movies are even less. And then there's another article on the New York Times that came out 2 weeks ago called How Will Movies Survive in the Next 10 Years? And they interview a lot of people. They interview J.J. Abrams, Jason Blum, the Russo brothers, Kumail Nanjiani.
I don't think those are the right people to interview.
I think it is. Jessica Chastain, Ava DuVernay, Paul Feig, Amy Pascal, Octavia Spencer, John Chu, Barry Jenkins, Paul Feig, Tom Rothman. And they basically talk about what is the future of film. Right. And my favorite one was the Jason Blum one, obviously, because he's the most candid guy there. Ava DuVernay actually had some interesting thoughts as well, but they basically came away with this conclusion that streaming is simply taking away from the box office. Now, the question is that a bad thing or is that a good thing? We can have an argument for hours about that.
Yeah.
You think it's a great thing. I think it's a little bit more gray because... Not F. Gary Gray, but just Gray.
That's good.
Okay.
Hey,
we're in the podcast now.
We're in podcast mode. I don't know what they did to these walls, goddammit, but something's going on here.
But I think it's more of a gray issue, and this is why. Ava DuVernay talks about the bullshit. She doesn't say bullshit, but she says the false notion of the importance, this importance of being a theatrically released movie or a theatrical.
I agree with that.
And she says that there's this weird and it's bullshit because most of the time those people who are being snobs about it, their movies don't even make money. And she'd rather have audiences watch her shit on Netflix, whether it be 13th.
Let's go, Queen. Let's go, Ava. Let's go. You talking? You preaching to the choir, man.
And I think she said, I wish I had the quote, but she said a great quote, and I'm gonna try my best to make it right. She says, a movie like Selma, which had box office push and which had a studio behind it and which had this big Oscar campaign. Didn't have as much of a connection. She said 4 times as many people saw 13th, or more than that, 4 times as many saw 13th than Selma. And that is kind of her reality check, where she rather makes a movie that people see than people give awards to or that people love. And the reality of the fact is that Selma is probably the biggest snub in Oscar history, to be honest, in my opinion. I mean, obviously that's recent. It's 2014. But I still think it's the biggest snub in Oscar history as far as Best Actor.
And Best Director.
And Best Director and Best Writer. Like, that to me is the biggest snub. And she said that she'd rather have people watch her shit than people go out to the theaters. And the problem with that is something like Jason Blum. And he had a great quote, too, talking about Whiplash, where the interviewer says, oh, man, I love watching Whiplash in the theater. And Jason Blum basically laughs at him. And he's like, bro, no one saw Whiplash in the theater. That thing bombed. And he said, right now, if I was making Whiplash, it wouldn't go to the theater. It would be going to streaming. And I think that's the negative side to RB3 because I personally would love to see something like a Whiplash with an audience. And I told my friend about watching Get Out in the theater and about watching Hereditary in the theater and how you can never replicate that RB3. And you can tell me a million times, yeah, you can, Ace, you can go watch it in your living room. It's not the same, RB3. It's just not the same. Watching Get Out opening night and watching Hereditary opening night, my roommate and I were talking about this. It's just not the same. And the unfortunate fact that a movie like Whiplash, which has one of the best third acts ever, one of the best finales ever, that you literally want to get up on your feet and clap, you don't have that interaction anymore. People see it would probably watch it on their laptops. And that to me, I did too. I saw Whiplash on my laptop, full disclosure. But the unfortunate fact is that how awesome would it have been to see it in theater and how awesome that experience. Get Out is still my perfect example that I will never have a replicated experience like Get Out. I don't think I would have loved that movie as much if I saw it on Netflix. I just don't think so.
Hey man, listen,
And that's good and bad, right?
Well,
I think it's bad because I want to see those small movies in a theater with an audience and get their reaction.
Yeah, I also want more people to see those small movies, and I think more people are going to watch those small movies if they're on Netflix.
But
my friend,
but that's the other thing. But I'll get into that. But my friend said it best. He's like, bro, I saw Hereditary on my laptop. I wish I could have seen it with you guys when it was in theaters. I would have had that same experience, and I didn't. And I was freaking out, and I was awesome, and I felt like turning to someone and being like, yo, you seeing this? This is crazy. But he couldn't because it was in his room. Like, that's a bummer. That to me is a bummer. But here's my follow-up to you, RB3. I like Netflix. I like what they do. I'm hyped for Stranger Things. I'm watching that shit right now. Yeah. You know, the new season that is literally coming out right now. Yeah. Or tonight or whenever it comes out.
It'll come out.
And I'm hyped for that. I'm probably going to binge the shit out of that. And I love what Netflix is doing because they're giving creators a different opportunity. The problem is they have this platform of promotion that I don't feel like they promote as much.
Bro, we talk about this all the time, man. But
I'm telling you, man. Film Twitter, audience interaction, awards campaigns, this stuff matters. Yeah. And if I see Big Little Lies get awards and attention more than When They See Us, I will flip this table, RB3. Yeah. And I feel like that's what's happening.
Well, we talked about this before we even start. I mean, we're already recording, but we talked about this before we start the episode. I think we need to just switch timelines, man, because I really do see, honestly, a lot of people on my timeline talking about When They See Us, and I see nobody talking about Big Little Lies. But I think it's just But see, I also understand Netflix is more interested in targeted marketing. Like they're more interested in getting all the black people to watch When They See Us instead of having a bunch of white people, shit on it. And it's clear in the I mean, you can see it even in the IMDb score. You look at any other piece of black-related content that goes on IMDb will sink it immediately, or the fan base would at least. Any IMDb thing that's anything black-related, it'll automatically go down to a 6, a 5, a 3. But when They See Us, it's of course the quality of the show is immaculate, which is why it deserves the high 9.1 score that it has on there or whatever. But it's also very, very, very much proof that they did not, that the advertising for this movie did not try to reach some far-reaching thing. It tried to be very specific and targeted, and it worked. And it ultimately ended up becoming the most watched thing on Netflix when it debuted. I don't know if it's still the most watched thing now, but
the biggest counter I have to you is that release your numbers.
Yeah. Well,
what is your metric?
When you're not selling ads, it really doesn't matter. Who are they releasing numbers for?
The Watch and The Big Picture. Had the biggest comeback to that. Once again, I'm going back to The Ringer, but they said, "Hey, what's your metric? Right. What's your metric?"
Right. But why would we
metrics
care? Why
matter.
does it matter to us?
Metrics matter.
But why?
They matter because someone who's freaking laying on the couch texting or talking to their girlfriend while When They See Us is playing in the background doesn't count.
Right.
It doesn't, and it shouldn't count.
But you can say the same thing about any TV show. You can say the same thing about any movie.
But it's not. But Netflix is a streaming platform.
Yeah.
But if HBO gives me their numbers, as bullshit as it may be, it's their numbers.
Bro,
but Netflix doesn't relieve them.
You know how they measure TV? They put a box in one in every 1,000 households.
I know.
How inaccurate is that's the most inaccurant shit.
Of course it is.
Why would Netflix be interested in releasing their numbers? They're not selling ads.
I think content and I think quality content is equally as much about marketing and conversation as it is about the actual quality of that content.
But the conversation around When They See Us has surpassed, I think, almost any other show that Netflix.
Has it though?
Yes, it has. Again, bro, they literally said it themselves. It's the most watched thing since it came out. I've been seeing think piece after think piece. I've been seeing BET talk about it, honoring it. I worked for the BET. Obviously, I worked for the BET Awards. They had the Exonerated 5 come up on stage and present a whole performance.
They did.
They would have never have done that if When They See Us didn't come out. And that just goes to show you the amount of impact that show has.
So here's my question to you now that you're giving me all these facts, dropping facts.
Right.
How is white Hollywood, for lack of a better word, because Hollywood is still majority white,
right,
as far as Emmys, as far as Oscars, bringing that stuff out into the forefront, bringing that stuff out into the conversation. Right. Because something like a Black Panther, white Hollywood couldn't turn away from it because of this.
The
money, man. Money talks.
Yeah.
But now
also it was palatable.
Sure.
It was Marvel, so it had a palette that.
But that's one of the only reasons why it actually broke that barrier, broke that glass ceiling of being the first superhero movie nominated at the Oscars.
Right.
Because they just couldn't ignore it. Something like When They See Us, I could see them being like, it's not on my timeline.
No, listen,
I don't watch the BET Awards.
Yeah. And again, that's Hollywood. I personally really stopped caring about these award shows like a while ago.
I do. I still care.
But see, that's the thing. It's like we have to either find a way to reward us. And I think Black people have found the BET Awards are a good outlet for promoting Black excellence. NAACP awards are good ways to promoting Black excellence.
Yeah,
We can't keep looking to white Hollywood for our acceptance.
I'm with you on that.
Ryan Coogler didn't even join the Academy. He said he didn't even want to join the Academy.
I'm with you. However, I have counters, and the counter is us.
Yeah.
Get Out.
All right.
Black Klansman. This is great content, and I feel like everyone should be aware of this. Everyone, not just the NCAA, not just the BET Awards.
Yeah, of course.
But everyone should see When They See Us.
All right.
Everyone.
All
And
right.
I really mean that. And I feel like it's disappointing when you don't have this kind of attention towards it versus having attention towards bullshit that Hollywood says is great.
Well, but like, it's again, is it attention through marketing? Is it attention through conversation? Because I see a lot of conversation about When They See Us happening like all throughout, and I think I think
it's both.
That show has been, but marketing is deceiving because marketing will make you think there's conversation about shit. Like the little hashtag shit with the little emoji next to it. That's all a way of telling you that, somebody's paying attention. It's obviously so popular that we have to create our own little fucking pixel for it, literally a pixel. So it's like
that's low-key fire, though.
Yeah.
On the marketing standpoint, it's fire.
It is fire. I mean, that's the whole point of marketing is to make you think that
did
people.
It too.
Yeah,
Get Out did it too.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, it's a good tool. But I think overall, but that's just what I'm saying though. The whole idea of the hashtag, the whole idea of the ad, the whole idea of the commercial is really just a way of people pushing what they want to push onto you. Marketing is really a way of the movie studios being like, this is what we want you to believe is going on around this movie.
100.
And Disney has become the masters of that. That's what the Marvel Cinematic Universe is. Literally the franchise is like, okay, we can't watch any other superhero movies now. This is the only one we're going to watch. Star Wars is great behind it. Pixar has gotten away with doing 8 sequels back to back to back, and nobody gives a fuck because the Pixar brand is so strong. So they're great at marketing their brand, marketing their content, marketing this stuff. Whereas Netflix is great at just giving the content out there, letting the content have its own conversation, have its own build. And once that hype builds up to a point of mainstream success, like When They See Us, like Stranger Things, like I don't know what else is out there that's
kind of it.
Recently. Nah, but they've done a lot of great stuff. Or Always Be My Maybe has been on the.
Have you seen Always Be My Maybe?
I haven't seen it. I don't care to see it.
It's not good.
I don't care to see it. But you know what I'm saying? It heats up. They obviously, and listen, Netflix is such a big platform. They make individualized things for every demographic. Now, if we want to talk about the garbage that's behind marketing, we could talk a lot about how Dark Phoenix was handled, how that whole bundle was kind of shaken up, because that's the example of a theatrical release not having any marketing, and it ultimately ended up bombing and falling on deaf ears. So it's just like what can you do? Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah, my thing is this all goes back to not Mission Impossible. I'm sorry, Men in Black International.
Yeah.
Why, if you're F. Gary Gray, why, if you're Tessa Thompson, do you go back to this kind of washed up IP?
Well,
that no one. I mean, that's the biggest question coming out of this flop, because the reality is, Men in Black is dead. Like that stuff was cool in the early 2000s, bro. When you were 1 or 2 years old.
I don't know.
Like this is the.
I saw the third one in theaters, 2012.
But that's the kind of stuff. Like, why is Hollywood doing Men in Black International when they should do something?
Now, according to the Hollywood Reporter article that came out, that kind of exposed a lot of behind the scenes drama in this, the original script was very well received. It dealt with the reason why it's called MIB International is because it dealt with a lot of modern day issues of immigration, and it dealt with a lot of like modern politics.
Yeah.
And I could see that being attractive to a star director like F. Gary Gray, and being attractive to stars like Chris Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson.
Yeah.
Now, according to HDR, the producer Walter Parks from Sony really got their hands in it. Revised, had the script rewritten several times, changed the villain, removed all the modern sensibilities. When they talk about modern sensibilities, they mean the politics, and even so much so that Tessa Thompson and Chris Hemsworth had to hire their own writers to be on set to fix the already broken dialogue from the rewrites. So clearly, this hasn't been working. This whole making movies thing hasn't been working for Sony. Sony, you just got to throw in the towel.
It was Sony.
Okay. Sony. They said, according to Hollywood Reporter, this producer and F. Gray even disagreed on the color correction. If you can't even get that part on the same page, and the movie looks fucking ugly too. By the way,
didn't he have like rewrites to the script though?
I think he probably has some rewrites.
F. Gary Gray, I'm saying.
But it says in the article he came very, very close to quitting multiple times throughout this production.
Wow.
There's no reshoots or major changes in post production because he just didn't feel like doing any more of it.
Sure.
And it's one of those things of like of producer creative clashing. I mean, we saw that with Hellboy. We saw that with Hellboy recently. We saw that with this movie. That's the whole game we play when we have these big budget gambles that aren't guaranteed successes. Whereas with Fate of the Furious, he has a lot more creative freedom because that's a proven $1 billion franchise. This is not.
That's
There's
what
going
I'm
to be
saying.
some micromanagement.
This is. I wanted to talk about F. Gary Gray doing these two franchises.
Right.
One of them is Fast and the Furious. The other one's Men in Black.
Yeah.
Like you see what like. That to me is such a big disconnect. Men in Black is a washed-up franchise based off the star power of Will Smith back when Will Smith was the biggest star in Hollywood.
Iconic.
Iconic. And now it's a washed-up franchise that even if he did have this really cool metaphorical ideology in his script, do you really think people still would have went out and watched it?
I think if it was a good movie, people go out to watch good movies. I think people go out to watch good movies at the end of the day.
This wasn't the pitch. If I'm a guy, I'm not pitching it as a good movie. I'm pitching it as Men in Black is back.
Yeah.
And they're in London.
Right.
No one cares.
Well, I think Tessa Thompson and Chris Hemsworth are hot right now.
That's true.
I think people would have went to see the Thor because people love him in Thor Ragnarok. People love Tessa Thompson from a bunch of things. People love Chris
she's Valkyrie.
Valkyrie. Yeah. I mean, people just love those two together. So I think if the marketing was right, I mean, when you watch the trailers for this movie, it really didn't look like anything other than another Men in Black movie. But I think if the content inside of the movie was there, if it had some racial, or political kind of context, and that would have creeped its way into the marketing a little bit, I think people would have been fascinated. I think the title was international. I'm sure they were targeting an international audience when doing this movie.
Yeah.
So I think they wanted to target more of the Chinas, more of the big budget, big markets.
I think that's bad. Yeah. I mean, don't you think that's bad?
That's terrible. I mean, but I also think, you can't put I think it's even worse. I think it's a great idea and concept to have an updated version of something that is outdated and that does, and if we're really having a real conversation about the original Men in Black franchise, or we're having a real conversation about any science fiction movie, most sci-fi is promoting intolerance, is promoting being scared of the other, being scared of the alien, being scared of the people who we're unfamiliar with.
Sci-fi in the 30s, maybe, not sci-fi now.
Yeah, sci-fi now. You watch the original Men in Black, the fucking Jamaican taxi driver guy is an alien, and they have to shoot him or something, or they talk. You just look at the way they treat these, and that's all of sci-fi. I mean, it's inherent in the genre of science fiction to be fearful of the other. That's just an inherent piece of the genre. But so if there's something that wants to subvert that, that's a good idea. But they should at least make sure they follow through with that. So I think at the end of the day, look, if this was a good movie, Bumblebee didn't do well, but people like Bumblebee. I didn't like Bumblebee, but Bumblebee did well enough.
Okay.
But it did well enough in the box office because it's quality. And even though people are done with Transformers, they want to see a quality movie. Whereas most recent blockbusters these days haven't been too good. So when you talk about sequels like, F. Gary Gray with Fate of the Furious, that one got much better reviews than Men in Black International. And the reason of that being is because there's actually a commitment to the content. Even as flimsical as Fate of the Furious' content was, it was still a commitment to it. And even, Be Cool is another sequel that he did as well. That's the sequel to Get Shorty, but that one's kind of garbage. So.
Yeah, and we don't have to talk about it. I guess I just feel like it's so IP driven to the point that it's like we have to use Men in Black because we have it. That's the only reason why. Right. And that's such a lame, such a lazy way of making movies, is just to say, hey, we have the Men in Black IP. Let's just do it because we have it. I love Tessa Thompson. She's one of my favorite actresses, and I can say I'm in love with her, and I think that's okay to say. And I'm in love with Chris Hemsworth, so he's my favorite freaking Avenger. So the pitch already is there with those two stars, but even that star power doesn't work because it's not big enough a dynamic to sell the movie. Right. I just think that's disappointing. But let's kind of go to jump down a year to Fate of the Furious, which is not a year, but it's like 2 years or something. Either way, this is a franchise that is after Fate 7 or Fast 7, whatever it was called, Fury 7. Mm-hmm. It was firing on all cylinders, pun intended. This thing was on fire. Right. That thing overperformed so much, that movie. Because Fast 5 was like, oh, that's really good and it's real successful. Fate 6 was like, Fast 6 was like, yo, this is picking up steam. Furious 7, which was the Paul Walker Goodbye, directed by James Wan, was just like, we are a billion-dollar franchise. We are we can compete with Marvel. And that's something that no one ever thought they would see from any other franchise. And now they got Hobbs and Shaw coming out and all this other stuff and all these other spin-offs planned based off the success of James Wan's Furious 7. But he inherited...
Not just James Wan, but...
I think James Wan did the biggest...
No, but I think you got to give credit to Justin Chu.
That's true. I'm sorry.
And
that's a good point.
Because it wouldn't be Fast 5. It wouldn't be Fast 7.
It started with Fast 5. That's a good point. It started with Fast 5, but I feel like James Wan is what made it the billion-dollar franchise.
Yeah.
In the franchise, they can just make a ton of money.
Yeah. But you got to give your praises to Fast and Furious because we talked about 3 different men of color on this podcast.
Yeah.
John Singleton, James Wan, now F. Gray.
What's his face? John Chu or James Chu?
Justin. Oh wait.
Justin Chen.
I might be off. I don't want to fuck this up. But yeah, salute to the Fast and Furious franchise for having. We're talking about 3 different men of color on this podcast, and we've talked about different Fast and Furious movies. So it's good it's really good.
Not just that, but the fact that the Fast and Furious movies lean towards a Latino vibe and a Latino feel when they go to different. Justin Lin. There you go. Yeah. Directed Star Trek, right? As well.
Star Trek Beyond. Star Trek Beyond and Space Jam 2.
But he is, that's a good point. Where I think that's a big idea and that's a big reason why it's so successful is because of the diversity. And I've talked about it a lot about how it's crazy how people use diversity as a way to say, oh, this is not good or this is not going to make money. And the irony is that if you lean in towards it, you will make a ton of money. And Fast and Furious is a great example of that because, to be fair, it's a subpar franchise, man. It really is.
I don't want to say it's subpar.
Fun? No. Question mark?
Oh, of course they're fun. Yeah, I mean,
that's kind of it.
You can't look at it anything deeper than fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but what I'm saying is like the reason why it's successful, I don't think it's because it's this, great experience at the movie theater. I think it's more of like look at all these different teams and how they can work together. But Fate of the Furious was pretty not good.
Well, okay. I don't
coming out hot.
I don't necessarily agree with that.
It's got The Rock pushing a missile to the side.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you gotta. They were all superhero.
It's got
characters
what's
before,
his face, homie. Homie, what's his face? Tyrese.
Oh yeah, Tyrese. Yeah. John Singleton
screaming and crying the whole movie.
Yeah.
Kind of like he was doing on his Instagram.
Man, what the fuck? This chair's lower than it should be. Listen.
Give me your thoughts on.
I think
Fate 8.
I think it's good. I think it's a good sequel. I don't think it's the greatest of the Fast and Furious franchise.
It's pretty bad.
But no, it's not bad at all.
It redeems Jason Statham.
Nah, redeems.
I don't know if you want to redeem that guy.
Yeah, but listen, man, the fact of the matter is this movie has a 67% Rotten Tomatoes. This is a good movie. I think they obviously had the real life beef between Vin Diesel and The Rock.
Right.
So that probably hindered. That's probably a lot of the reason why you didn't see Vin Diesel and The Rock interacting.
And this is what launched Hobbs and Shaw.
Yeah.
So I mean,
this
gave them the idea to do this movie.
Yeah, and I think this movie, this movie definitely has a lot of iconic moments.
What's the name one?
The cars jumping out of the parking garage.
That's Furious 7, bro.
No, I'm not literally like hundreds of cars falling out of the parking garage. Like,
that's Too Fast, Too Furious.
No. The scene, they're like Charlize Theron is like remote controlling a bunch of cars.
Yeah.
And then they're like falling from like there's literally hundreds of cars like like chasing him. Yeah, that one. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, but
the CGI cars falling out of the building.
Hey, I thought that was lit. I also think that one scene when Vin Diesel in his muscle car took on 4 other fucking military
that was
vehicles
pretty
and won. I was like, dang man, he really beasted up on him.
When he goes to Cuba and he hangs out with the homies.
Oh yeah, I actually got to speak to. I didn't get to speak to, but I work with the dude Anthony Padilla, and he interviewed stunt people, and we spoke to one of the stunt women who did the driving for that scene. Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, so salute to her. But yeah, no, I think it's overall a really good movie. I think they captured the tone of the Fast and Furious franchise. I think, you know, and at the very least, you can't say there wasn't good action in it. I think the scenes with the baby. You know, when they're in the plane and they're Jason Statham and Luke Evans are like fighting, and then the baby is like in the background. They keep have to like check in on the baby. That was pretty cool. That was a pretty
good fight.
Yeah. And also salute to Helen Mirren being in this movie too. Helen Mirren in this film. I think overall.
Do you think F. Gary Gray gave enough of a thumbprint to say that's an F. Gary Gray movie?
But what's F. Gary Gray's thumbprint? I think F. Gary Gray's thumbprint is very actually comedic, and I think he adds a comedic spin to like movies that necessarily shouldn't have comedic moments. We're going to talk about Straight Outta Compton later, but I think there are a lot of moments in Straight Outta Compton that are kind of conceived for the sole purpose of getting a laugh.
I just feel like, do you counter me on this? Any Fast and Furious movie following Furious 7 would have been successful regardless.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that? Regardless of the director or the script or whatever?
Yeah, but if it would have sucked, it wouldn't have made as much money as it made.
Like how much less though? Like 4 million less.
Listen,
you see
again,
what I'm saying? Like it's still gonna be like $1 billion movie. Regardless.
I think. Listen, man. Maybe I'm a little too utopian in my mindset, but I really do think quality equals quantity. I think quality of movie is going to equal quantitative box office.
Not always,
but I think if you make a good movie, you're always going to make more money than if you made a bad movie.
Okay, I tend to agree with that.
Yeah, so that's just.
I mean, those are his 2 biggest franchises. We're going to get a little bit more into his early
Get
career.
Shorty as well.
Get Shorty.
Be Cool, not a good movie, but if you want to watch this on Amazon Prime, and it's some good like Hollywood funny.
Yeah, I mean, obviously,
Hollywood marketing.
He's got some other blockbusters that we'll touch upon, but first, I want to talk about Anchor. And the ability to speak to us, RB3. Because guess what? On the Anchor app, you are able to send in messages, thoughts, comments, questions, whatever you want. So the first thing we want to do right now is recommend to you to head on over to Anchor.
Yeah, follow us on Anchor.
Follow us on Anchor, the meaning of. And leave us a comment, a message, whatever you want to say, and we might just play it on the show. In fact, we have a very special message from our good buddy, Raul, who's a recent Anchor user for his own podcast,
The Nerd Core.
Yeah. And he has a question message for us.
Yeah.
So
we'll just go ahead and play that.
Let's jump to it.
Hey guys, this is Raul, big fan of the show. Love your show, guys. And you guys talked to me before on Twitter and replied to my YouTube comments and stuff, whatever. I wanted to get your thoughts because I know you guys did an X-Men episode last week, which was a great episode, by the way. I wanted to get your thoughts because Jason Momoa said he would love to play Wolverine, but I don't see him as Wolverine. I wanted to get your thoughts on that and what you thought of maybe seeing him as Sabretooth instead of Wolverine.
All right, RB3, what do you think of Jason Momoa being inside this new X-Men franchise?
Listen,
Definitely not Wolverine.
Yeah, I mean, I think
we agree on that.
I think you don't think he'd be good Wolverine?
No,
he got the savagery. I wouldn't want to see him because he's Aquaman right now. I don't think he could be like a lead in one and a side character.
And Aquaman's great. It's a great movie.
No, it's really good. Actually, I think that's probably the main. That's my main thing. Why I don't want to see the DCU. Unless they probably will reboot it again eventually.
Sure.
But I mean, he's kind of built for Aquaman right now. Sabretooth's not a bad idea, but
I kind of like the Sabretooth one.
I kind of want to see Dave Bautista as Sabretooth.
Ooh.
But he's already Drax, so I guess it won't matter. Are there any big guys that you want to see who like Wolverine or?
No, to be honest, man, I really do feel, and I think there's a huge conversation happening right now with Kevin Feige and with Marvel about what to do with X-Men. I think the best thing you can do with X-Men is give it time. Give it time.
Yeah, I don't think they should jump into it.
I don't think they should. I
Fantastic
think you
Four,
should give
though.
it like
Yeah.
Fantastic Four. Go ahead.
Yeah.
But X-Men, people really are connected to Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. I think the last thing you want to do is like announce and like Spider-Man Far From Home, like new Wolverine. Like who knows? Maybe he does. We haven't seen the movie yet.
Right.
We're gonna see it, but
I already have the post-credit scene spoiled for me.
oh, there you go. I don't know what it is, but what I'm saying is like I think that's a bad move if you're Marvel. Don't just jump the gun too quick. Give it like a good 8 years.
Yeah.
If not more, 10
8
years.
years. You think Marvel's gonna be around that long?
Yeah.
That's optimistic.
Yeah. That's just my idea.
Yeah.
I low key don't mind the Kit Harington Wolverine,
Harington.
just because he's a small dude. He's my height, so I'm like,
really.
make Wolverine
short.
#, make Wolverine short again.
Yeah. But I don't think you should. I mean, if you ask me, Logan is really the official end of the X-Men franchise. And I think that's really where they got it. That's where they got, sleep.
Either way, thank you, Raul, for that question.
Yeah.
All right, guys, now we're going to jump to a quick break. We'll be right back talking about F. Gary Gray and his early career. All right, we are back talking about F. Gary Gray's early career. Once again, we have another director who started off as a music video director, RB3. I mean, we had the biggest one we had was Fincher, right? Fincher was the big music video guy.
Yeah, Venture, Spike Jonze.
Spike Jonze.
There's a lot that we've covered on this podcast, stuff and music videos.
But F. Gary Gray started working with his big-time collaborator, and I think he still collaborates with him sometimes, with Ice Cube.
Oh, yeah.
He was the director of the very famous music video of It Was a Good Day.
Yeah, great song.
It's crazy, man. I mean, then he went on to work with Cypress Hill, Queen Latifah, Coolio, TLC, Don't Go Chasing Waterfalls.
Yeah, a lot of people,
Snoop Dogg, Whitney
Dr.
Houston.
Dre.
I mean, Babyface. I mean, R. Kelly. Whoops. Outkast.
Redact that one.
Redact that. Cut it out. Bleep it. Bleep. Fix that in post, RB3.
Fix it in post.
Outkast. I mean, this guy has been in the hip-hop music industry, movie industry. I love that, RB3. I love that hip-hop can have an influence on Hollywood.
Yeah.
And how the music hip-hop world can coexist and in fact influence movies.
Right.
And the kind of content that we see now. I've been preaching about that for a long time because I feel like it should be incorporated even more. And the fact that one of the winner for the Oscar for Best Score was low-key like a hybrid African hip-hop score. I love that with Ludwig.
Yeah.
And I was a big proponent of that as far as...
German dude.
Yeah, it was Swedish, I think. Swedish,
yeah.
But the fact that, bringing hip-hop back into movies, and that's something that kind of defined F. Gary Gray's career.
Hey. No, I mean, yeah, definitely. I think you got to look at the influence of both hip-hop. I mean, He was born in New York, but he was raised primarily in South LA. And the conditions that were going on in South LA during that time, in particular, the rise of NWA, with the rise of a lot of these major groups, the rise of LA hip hop in general kind of came in the conditions of like the Reagan era, right? Like the Reagan era.
That's right. It was like a response to it.
Yeah, because the community was being devastated by the amount of guns, by Reagan's foreign policy with the
war on drugs,
the contraband that was moving in from all of these South American countries. When we're talking about guns, we're talking about the crack cocaine, which is another thing that was
talk about my countries, my history, Colombia.
But the whole history of the United States, funneling those drugs in here to start a drug war to create unrest amongst these black communities.
I mean, watch Narcos. Have you seen Narcos?
I haven't seen Narcos. No,
bro, they talk all about that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's U.S. puddling that kind of led that to be the case for a lot of South LA. The guns coming in from Iran. It went from being 22s to Uzis. It went to a whole other violent thing. And you even look at like 1982, for example. 1982 was a year that gang-related homicides literally doubled in South Los Angeles, and that's coming. And we're talking about the late 80s, early 90s, NWA period, Friday period, that kind of period. But if you go even deeper than that, going back to the 60s or you go even further than that to the 1940s with the Zoot Suit riots in the 40s that were started because of this centralized oppression that a lot of people of color were forced to live under kind of the territory that represents South LA, south of downtown Los Angeles. Going from there to the 60s with the oppression happening in Watts, leading to the Watts riots in 1965. Going to even in this time, late 80s, NWA, Niggas with Attitude, and how the unrest was continuing to boil in the city, breaking out into the LA riots in 1992. So these are all factors that play into the kind of tone, the environment that is represented in Gary Gray's films. And
it started with the 1995 Friday, which was kind of, obviously has a lot of those factors going into the movie.
Right, which is about an urbanized South Central LA community that is kind of that is totally centralized in his main characters of Ice Cube and Chris Tucker, but it's also about. I mean, you watch a lot of that movie, you meet a lot of different characters. You meet the Mexican dudes who buy from Smokey. You meet the short dude who lives across the street from him, and his wife, Miss Parker, and Bernie Mac's character, who's the preacher, who's hidden from the on the side. His mom, his dad. This movie Friday is one of my favorite comedies of all time. I think it might be. I think I said Big Lebowski is my favorite comedy. This might be, if not number two, it's
crazy.
It's up there. And they're very similar, almost kind of in certain ways.
Let's take a step back and bring this into 2019 or now,
right.
And just talk about like what this movie says now, and just the fact that it lives on a technical level, but it also lives on a meme level and on like a
cultural level.
Bye Felicia, like that's a thing because of this movie, and the fact that was brought back like 3 years ago when people were saying that again.
Straight Outta Compton brought it back.
That's right, Straight Outta Compton.
Every great guy's on film.
That's right, and the fact that Bye Felicia, the damn, like that was a thing too with Chris Tucker. The looks that they had on, like what they were wearing, the fact that people dress up as Ice Cube and Chris Tucker in this movie, like during Halloween for stuff like I've seen people dress up as them, and the memes that this thing created, like the fact that wasn't there, I might be tripping, but wasn't there like this thing memed through like Game of Thrones and through other stuff on Twitter, the fact that people go back to this movie.
Right.
Talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, no, it just had a resounding cultural impact, and the fact that it was, it's an urban quote unquote urban comedy. It's a black comedy, featuring black people, directed by a black person, written by Ice Cube,
and it's very LA too.
It's very specific to LA because, like I said, it embraces the conditions that were impressed upon South LA during that time. You have characters like Debo, characters like Felicia, kind of characters who are by some will be seen as irredeemable, but in the context of this community, they're just seen as like the bully or the crack addict, So this movie does do a resounding amount in humanizing what many would consider the stereotypes of South Central LA life, but then also adding a lot of comedic value to it. And of course, the marijuana element of it adds a lot to that too. This is probably one of the best stoner comedies of all. I think this is probably one. Like I said, Big Lebowski. To me, it's funny because Big Lebowski and I don't know what year Big Lebowski came out, but Friday, they're almost parallel movies in a certain sense, where Big Lebowski is more about like the white kind of stoner life, where you kind of one man goes on an adventure and it kind of spirals downwards. Friday is kind of the same thing, except it's just more about these two friends.
That's wild.
From the black LA perspective. They definitely the stoner aspect, I think, is what speaks most to the cultural phenomenon these days too. Nowadays we're getting a lot of legalized marijuana. LA is kind of the hub, kind of always been known for the chronic, for lack of a better term. So, yeah.
It's crazy how that has such a big impact as far as like people start decriminalizing marijuana because more white people are smoking marijuana.
Right, and which, by the way,
which is crazy to me.
I don't know if you've seen this, but Killer Mike had an amazing speech where he said that, rappers should receive the credit for should receive a lot more credit for the decriminalization and legalization of marijuana throughout this country, because it's really people like Cypress Hill, it's really people like Snoop Dogg, it's really people
but the
like
fact
all these people
that
who put it in the faces of white audiences.
the owners
and
the new farmers are all white people now.
Yeah.
The fact that those are the ones who are making the major profits off the new industry that is popping up now.
And it's because California has the rules and the law set up in such a way that it makes it extremely difficult for people without money or without privilege to obtain the necessary legal factors and ramifications to keep black people having dispensaries.
It's also the large amount of people who are locked up because of these,
right.
marijuana type charges.
Hey, listen, man, they gotta for every.
It's bullshit. It's basically what it is.
I feel like for every Madman's purchase, you got to donate $1 to a nonviolent drug offender who has been in prison for carrying a little bag of weed on them.
Final question I have for Friday. This is written by Ice Cube or co-written by Ice Cube.
Sir, and DJ Pooh.
And DJ Pooh.
I want to tweet DJ Pooh, man, because he doesn't have a lot of followers on Twitter, but he's my guy. He's done a lot of movies.
How much of this is a F. Gary Gray, directorial debut, and how much of this is Ice Cube coming into Hollywood? What is more prominent inside this movie? Is it an Ice Cube movie or is it an F. Gary Gray movie?
Well, it's definitely an Ice Cube vehicle. He wrote it for himself, and Chris Tucker. I think Chris Tucker is probably the biggest star.
That's right.
That comes out of this because Ice Cube previously had Boys in the Hood that came out before this time. So Ice Cube had a big screen debut that ended up getting a lot of critical acclaim.
But the fact that Ice Cube is still big now in Hollywood.
Yeah. I mean, Ice Cube just goes to speak. I mean, he was the producer. God bless Ice Cube, Cube Vision. They're the producers on the show I just got done working on called Hip Hop Squares.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So they do amazing. They're doing amazing work over there with Jesse Collins Entertainment. But with Ice Cube, now he's put himself in a position where he has his hands in a basketball league.
I heard him. What's it called again? The 3-on-3 league?
I forget what it's called.
But it's a bunch of
retired people. Yeah, it's
retired NBA players.
Yeah, it's great though. It's great if you watch it on TV.
It got covered on ESPN, bro.
Yeah. No, it's great.
I was like, what?
And I know him and a lot of other black people were trying to put some money together, buy some networks.
But this is the kind of crossover that we talked about on the John Singleton episode about hip hop stars jumping over to Hollywood and vice versa, and how people like Tupac, people like Donald Glover now, people like who are doing the whole jumping around. Common obviously is the big example, but like it's always this back and forth of hip hop and acting and directing and writing.
Well, hip hop music inadvertently is hip hop music in the same way that any music is performance. So having a musician. And particularly a writer, you gotta remember, Ice Cube was the writer for NWA. He wrote like pretty much everybody's rhymes. I don't know if he wrote everybody's rhymes, but he wrote a lot of the songs behind the major success.
And they talk
Boys
about it
Hood.
On Straight Outta Compton.
Yeah, exactly. But because he has that writing experience, it translates both in his songwriting, his movie writing, and being able to perform that.
That's a good point.
He's performing his own songs that he writes. So
I never looked at it like that. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah. So
I guess it's the whole aspect of like there's a huge hip hop, and you're a historian of hip hop as much as anyone, and I followed it for quite a bit. But there's this element of hip hop which goes to the whole hard aspect, for lack of a better word, the whole, I don't want to say kayfabe because I think that's too strong a word, but the element of like, I'm too hard for this shit, bro. I'll kill you. Like that's the kind of attitude as far as like, how does that guy write Hollywood movies?
Right. I mean, but you also got to remember Ice Cube, when he grew
Tupac,
up.
You talked about it with Tupac, right?
Yeah.
The whole aspect of like, how much is Tupac really like a gangster, gangbanger who's going to kill you, and how much of him is like, he's a really cool, like,
nice
sensitive
guy,
actor,
poetry,
who can write poems and he can really give a romantic performance.
Right. No, I mean,
it's that kayfabe as far as like, you see what I'm saying?
Right. It's I wouldn't
how much of it is a character and how much is it?
I wouldn't necessarily say it's like kayfabe or a character, but you gotta remember Ice Cube is a guy who grew up in Compton, lived in Compton his entire life, but he was bused back and forth to the valley for school.
What if Eazy-E was alive right now? What would his impact be?
Eazy-E has always been a gangster. I mean, he was known as a gangster. The reason he
you
went
don't think
into music,
Eazy-E would be in Hollywood right now, or be in the hip hop industry?
Oh, he would definitely. He definitely
love
would.
that guy.
Yeah, but I think Eazy-E's great. I mean, I think what Eazy-E goes to show is an example of somebody who had the money from the drug dealing days, trying to get out of that.
Yeah.
And that's the story of a lot of these rappers you see these days. The story of Jay-Z. That's the story of that's the story of a lot of people.
And the fact that Jay-Z right now is on fire with Kyrie and Kevin Durant going to Brooklyn. I'm not tripping.
Super.
That's
team,
all because
he only owns 1% of the net.
No, but I'm saying it's Rock Nation, bro.
Yeah,
it's the agency.
The agency. That's
because Kyrie
what it comes down to.
He dropped his agent and he signed with Rock Nation, and that's the reason why he chose Brooklyn
Right.
over the Knicks.
Right.
Like, that's a big deal. That's a hip hop influence times 10.
Right.
The fact that it's influencing NBA players on where they're going and what decisions they're making.
Right,
That's how powerful hip hop is. And the fact that an agency can now promote into the sports industry, which has been dominated by players of African American players,
right,
and now having African American influence of choosing where they're going, who they want to play for, and what money they want to invest in. That's a huge influence. And as far as like Kyrie choosing Brooklyn and making that a financial investment as much as a basketball investment.
Right.
That's powerful.
I mean, that's what it comes down to. And you got to remember, Ice Cube's a smart guy when it really comes down to it.
Yeah, he's a smart guy.
You even listen to the first big song that blew up, Boys in the Hood. It seems like a pretty simple song, right? It's about...
How does it start, every three?
Cruising down the street in my 6'4".
There we go.
That's what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
But it's a very simple song when you think about the first two verses. But if you pay close enough attention to the last verse of that song, the last verse of the song, I kind of want to pull up the lyrics, so I don't want to like get it completely incorrect.
Yeah.
But the last, let me see, Boys in the Hood.
What's great is they talk about this song quite a bit in Straight Outta Compton, which came out 2015.
So they say here the lyrics are cruising down the street in my 6'4". All right, so the lyrics are to this point, one of the associates in the song, Kilo G, is one of the ones who was selling Kilo, obviously. Now, at the end of the song, they have this whole verse talking about a disruption in the court, and a lady named and Kilo G's girlfriend Susie comes in and shoots up the entire courthouse. The way the events are kind of described in this song, with a 6-year sentence, the man don't budge. Bailiff came over to turn him in. Kilo G looks over and gave him a grin. It's all a slight allusion to an actual real life event that happened in the 1970s in Maryland County Silver Center, where there was a black activist whose name was Jonathan Jackson, who came into the courtyard, who came into the courthouse. And shot up the courthouse because he wanted to free his brother who was imprisoned. So it's very much this song, even though it's a fun, kind of playful, like day in the life of a hood dude kind of song, the end of it does have a lot of real social and historical and political implications. And you can see that just in the first song that Ice Cube has put out, and the first song that NWA represents, and obviously due to this Maryland County Civil Center case that happened in the 1970s, Angela Davis, who's one of the biggest Black Panther activists at that time, was actually charged and convicted for supposedly providing the weapons for that attack. So it's very much all connected to a real thing. And it's indicative of what NWA represented, and the rebellious factor, and the anti-establishment factor, and the F the police factor. It's all of that all came to represent what the community that it was representing wanted to say. So, F the Police is one of the biggest songs of all times because it spoke to how black men in LA, pre and post LA riots, were feeling were being beaten, were being discriminated. This is before we had the cameras. This is before we had Black Lives Matter.
I was going to say, look at how big it is now.
Yeah, now it's
Black
big.
Lives Matter.
But you can see, I mean, this is, and even they say it even Ice Cube's character says it in Straight Outta Compton. He's not, he's a journalist for the streets. And the streets have always been dealing with police brutality. Have always been dealing with unfair conditions, not having the same kind of wage, having this ginormous wage disparity. So it's all,
Yeah, and we see all of this. Let's jump to 2015, man. Take me back to 2015. First of all, your thoughts on when they announced it. I remember when they announced it, and they said Ice Cube's son is playing Ice Cube, and I was like, y'all tripping. Did you not have that reaction?
I
did.
I said good for him, man, because if all these white motherfuckers are going to have nepotism, let's have a black man have some nepotism in Hollywood too, baby. Let's go.
Played some LeVar Ball.
Yeah.
My son's the greatest son of all time.
Yeah, that's what I like. That's
Guess what, bro? You got to go to New Orleans
LeVar
now.
said it was all part of the plan. LeVar said it was all part of the plan.
Low key. And I know we're not talking about NBA right now because I'm an NBA fan and I can go off and off.
Right.
I like Lonzo in New Orleans, man.
Hey,
that's good fit.
Him and Zion. Yeah, him and Zion.
I love Zion, bro. Yeah. Zion is my boy.
Josh Hart's going to do well out there, too.
Either way, straight out of Compton, 2015.
Yeah.
Came out. I saw this opening-ish night. I think I saw the day after. I saw it with my homie. Culver City ArcLight. We went to see it. What'd you think, man? Walking out of this movie, it was getting some pretty big buzz beforehand.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a really well done kind of biopic. It's great that it's told from somebody, who kind of not necessarily experienced these things firsthand, but kind of had a hand in it. It is relatively safe.
I was gonna say,
but
that's a big criticism. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, it's safe in the fact that it willfully ignores some of the darker elements of some of the main characters. I don't want to go into that, but I think that they definitely, it's always a benefit and a disparagement to have the people who the biopic is about to still be alive. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's a real benefit because you get a real true perspective of these characters, and I think having Ice Cube and Dr. Dre and a lot of these guys alive actually helped this movie because it did lend a lot of firsthand perspective. But I think to some disparagement, it does lead to glossing over some of the more controversial elements of their life. So it's up to you if you want to. It depends on how people want to discuss that or talk about that.
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day,
do you think
this movie was successful.
Do you think it was too? For lack of a better way of putting it, Dr. Dre and Ice Cube praising themselves?
I don't necessarily think that. I mean, at least according to the history that I've read of NWA, it seems like their roles are appropriate in the building of this. I
can just say one thing. As a fan of hip-hop and as someone who, obviously knows Dr. Dre and Ice Cube, but the fact that as someone who, way back in the day, bro, I grew up on Kanye, right? Kanye was my hip-hop, late registration. That was my album. And as someone who was like the idea of someone who would make his own beats and then rap over them. The fact that you can make because I still feel that the importance of a track of the beats is so important in hip hop.
That's what Dre was.
That's what Dre was, and I can't lie. One of the greatest producers of all time is Dr. Dre, man.
Yeah, I say
those beats were fire. Like they still hold up. As like when you first see that scene, and I know it's such a ridiculous scene, but it's still a fun scene, and people love it. The Snoop Dogg scene.
Oh yeah.
Shout out to Lakeith Stanfield, my boy.
That was great.
Doing the whole 1, 2, 3 into the 4. Like that I was freaked out in the theater listening to that. But if you go back to that beat and if you go back to the Chronic, that's so fire.
Yeah,
it's so fire.
I definitely think like, Dr. Dre.
I walked out of the theater and I was like, man, this is why I wanted to be a producer as a kid. Like I wanted to make beats. I thought that was the hottest thing ever. I don't know. That's the one thing I took away from it the most because of Dr. Dre.
No, I definitely agree. I think he is probably the greatest hip-hop producer
of all time. Yeah.
He
made some of the dopest beats
I don't know about
ever.
general producers because I still put Quincy Jones up there.
Yeah,
but definitely,
but like, as far as making beats, making hip hop, I still put Kanye up there too.
But Kanye's
I love Kanye's
good number
beats.
2, hard number 2. And I think overall though, I think what the impact of having figures like Doc. I mean, you can even see it in the movie. Like the second that Dr. Dre leaves his NWA, first when Ice Cube leaves NWA and it spawns perhaps the greatest diss track of all time, and No Vaseline.
That's right.
I think that's a good indicator of the kind of attitude that these guys had towards the music industry. Jerry Heller is a very common figure that we see throughout a lot of not just music biopics, but in music history throughout. I mean, there's always going to be that slimy producer who's gonna. And this guy obviously was a manager for Jerry Heller was obviously a manager for like the Rolling Stones and Elton John. But what a lot of people will see in Jared Heller is the kind of the quintessential example of a culture vulture, somebody who is white, who sees the opportunity of young, successful black men and wants to soak up all that culture from them so it's all for themselves and make all that money themselves. So it was great that Ice Cube, again, very smart dude. He finished high school. He went to college. He had the foresight in seeing that something was going on. Something was fishy with the deal. He left the group, and ultimately Dr. Dre figured it out as well. But with him, he got in bed with Suge Knight, which is a whole nother
yikes, fam.
stuff. Yeah. So,
that's a yikes for me, dog.
Yeah, that's a big yikes.
Yeah, and the fact that they touch upon it, and you saw the Dr. Dre HBO documentary. With
the
Jimmy.
Defiant ones. Yeah, Jimmy Iovine. Yeah, the Defiant
that thing
ones.
was crazy, bro.
Yeah,
I think
amazing.
like the fact that the connection between the music industry with the hip hop industry and how it just kind of comes into fruition,
right.
And how he was just like so down on his luck, and the fact that he went from like Snoop Dogg to Tupac to like Eminem, bro.
Right.
Like that's crazy to me.
Right. No, he's definitely. I mean, a producer's got to have ears, and he's always had an ear for a lot of that stuff. So
let's finish up with kind of doing a double time kind of thing for the rest of the biggest standouts of the rest of his career, because I know we're a little bit over on time. Italian Job is probably his next biggest movie. People love this movie. RB3. Talk to me about the Italian Job.
Well, you threw it to the wrong man because I haven't seen this one. But
in full disclosure, I knew that you hadn't seen it.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where if I had to say the next famous movie, it's the damn Italian Job, bro. People love this movie. It's like a mini heist Ocean's 11 type movie,
right.
For lack of a better way of putting it.
Yeah, I think it's definitely.
And it's got some people that he puts in other of his movies with Jason Statham and Charlize Theron. He works with him in Fate of the Furious.
Mm-hmm.
So shout out to that connection, man.
And also Marky Mark, good for him.
Obviously,
this is obviously a remake of the 1970s movie. Which
that's right.
1969 movie. I'm sorry.
That's right.
I mean, I love any kind of parody, or not parody, but this is kind of a parody of the original heist movie, the original British version that starred Michael Caine. So good for that.
Good for him.
We got to talk about the meaning of the Italian Job one day. But I think probably the most significant one, we talked about Be Cool a little bit in the beginning. Be Cool, a sequel to Get Shorty. It's very, very funny, kind of Hollywood spoof, but it's also like really kind of trash. But I think the most interesting one, of course, I didn't even mention Set It Off, which is one of my mom's favorites. The Negotiator. We didn't say The Negotiator either. The Negotiator is another great one. That one's great. We kept,
Tell me the one you were going to go to, then.
But Set It Off is great as well with Queen Latifah. That one's a very, very pro-black woman kind of movie starring Queen Latifah, Jada Pinkett Smith. It's a movie that deals a lot with poverty. It's a movie that deals a lot with the conditions that black women are put under and how they have to literally rob banks to overcome those conditions. We follow a single mom and I believe Jada Pinkett Smith's character, or not her, but and Queen Latifah's character is a lesbian, which she obviously is too in real life. So it's it deals with a lot of good themes.
He's had a career for sure.
And law-abiding citizen. Do you support death penalty?
Is that the one you wanted to talk about?
Yeah.
Do I support what?
Do you support death penalty?
Oh, is that what you want to talk about?
Nah. No, you don't support Al?
No.
Yeah.
I don't know if I do.
Yeah.
No, I don't think I do.
Yeah.
Just because I don't think there's a great report, and I know it's a comedic report, but it's still a report from John Oliver. I know you don't watch John Oliver, right?
I watch him sometimes.
He made a good point. He said, if we're going to talk about death penalty, we're going to have to talk about how to do it. And if there's not a good way how to do this, then let's not do it.
Right.
That's the best way to put it.
Right.
There's no good way to do it.
Did you hear those stories of the dude who got the death penalty, and then like they didn't even finish? Like he couldn't even finish. Like he said that whole night they put the needles inside of him, tried to do the shit, and it didn't even work. Yeah. And he said he spent the whole night like or just dreaming about like those needles going in his body, like knowing he was about to die. Like
it's too much.
That's traumatizing.
It's too much. It really is. And I'm not. I don't know. It's a very deep. I'm very anti-violence,
right?
For lack of a better way of saying it, but at the same time, it's like it's just too much of a complicated thing. But law-abiding citizen, Jamie Foxx. Shout out to Jamie Foxx.
Right.
Shout out to what's his face, Gerard Butler.
Yeah. I saw this movie in theaters, man. I saw this movie. It's one of those few movies
I like
I
this
saw in
movie.
theaters.
I gave it some crap before we went live, and you got mad at me, but I like it. I really do.
No, it's actually pretty great.
Let's finish up by saying, where does he go from here?
Where does he go from here?
He just bombed with Mission Impossible International. We can obviously
I don't know if
say
that's his fault,
I think we concluded that it's not his fault,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
He killed. He basically started off Hobbs and Shaw with Fate of the Furious, so we know he can do something with franchises.
Who directed Hobbs and Shaw?
David Leitch.
Oh, good for him.
What does he do? Does he make a small movie? Does he make a big movie? Does he go back on franchise hopping?
Let's go back to Friday 4, baby. We got to make this done last Friday. We got to get last Friday done. They've been talking about it for years. Now he's not. I don't think his name's in the running.
I was gonna say
he should.
If they make it without him, that's kind of hardcore.
I mean, they made the other 2 sequels without him. But they gotta do Last Friday, man. They gotta do it right. There's some.
Is that what they call it? What do they call it?
I think they're calling it Last Friday. But I think that's a perfect name. But they got okay. But there's rumors about Kevin Hart replacing Chris Tucker. No, don't do that. Don't do that.
You don't like Kevin Hart, right?
I like Kevin Hart. I think he's all right. But I support black businesses, so I support Hart Productions. But
alrighty, guys, that was the Meaning of Podcast. We talked about F. Gary Gray. Let us know on the comment section on First Take. First Cut.
First cut. Hey.
Sorry. The Knicks are a disgrace.
It's the worst day of the Knicks fans and shit.
That's First Take, not First Cut. Go over on YouTube, youtube.com. Find us on First Cut, where we can find a video format on this podcast. Hashtag support the homies. Go over on Anchor to find us there for the Meaning of Podcast. iTunes, anywhere you can find a podcast. Go support us. Leave us a comment. Leave us a voice message, just like you heard from Raul today. If you have a comment from this episode, if you have a question based on something else, we might just answer it on the show.
And listen, we're already this far deep, so if you're still listening, thank you for listening. But if you're listening, that means you're a real fan. And what we want to hear from is real fans. So we want to do, for our 100th episode, we want to take everybody's voice recording, everybody's comment, everybody's tweet. Bring it our way. We're gonna read it.
We had some great comments in the past. So we might bring them back.
Yeah. But for episode 100, we want to have 100 comments. We want to have 100 voice recordings. We want to have 100. You know what I mean?
100 emojis.
100 tweets. Yeah, 100 emojis. So hey, listen, man. I don't even know if 100 people listen to this show, but if you're out there listening, make sure you check that out for us.
And tell your friends about it so we can have 100 more.
Right.
There you go.
There it is.
Either way, guys, for the Meaning of Podcast, I'm Ace.
It's RB3.
And we are peacing out. Peace out, guys.
Hey.